My name is Dr. Tracy Fanara, environmental engineer and scientist, and you're on the Tom Rowland podcast.
What's going on, everybody? This is the Tom Rowland podcast brought to you by Starbright. And today we have another part of our series, Anglers Unite, with our partner, Burnowin. And the Anglers Unite series has been a really good one for me. I've learned a lot about different ways that we as anglers or we as outdoors people can get together to really move the needle on things that make a big difference. And we've talked about a lot of different things. And water quality is definitely one of the things that I do believe that we can have the biggest impact by working together. And today we have Dr. Tracy Fanara, and she is an environmental engineer, a scientist. I consider her a hydrologist, and I even told her that I thought she was a meteorologist, but she told me that she's definitely not a meteorologist. But anyway, we're going to talk about all types of different water quality issues, mostly in the state of Florida. Some we've touched on before, like pharmaceuticals in the water, others, red tide. She is going to be our first red tide specialist that we're going to have in the podcast, and I'd love to bring her in right now. Tracy, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, very excited. Very excited. So, an environmental engineer, scientist, a hydrologist. I called you a meteorologist. You said you're not. But where did you study?
I got all 3 degrees from the University of Florida. After my BS in environmental engineering, I worked in land development, and I saw how we were managing our land and went back to school to prove that there was a better way to approach land management, water quality, so that we have a more sustainable future economically and health-wise here in Florida.
So when you go back and try to find a better way, do you think you found a better way?
Yes. So low impact development, there's different techniques that you can basically use when you're designing a new or even retrofitting an area where you can basically treat water where it is. So let me back up for a second. So basically, traditionally, we have built our systems, our land, any kind of building that we have to get rid of the water as fast as possible. So we put concrete, we put a bunch of pipes, and we try to prevent from flooding. But what happens is that we keep on building, and not only do we take that water that used to be underneath the ground, we put it on top of the ground or through pipes where it transfers to natural water bodies without treatment that natural soil gives it, physical, biological, and chemical treatment. Causing erosion, water quality problems, shocking temperatures for wildlife, and just basically changes the ecosystem that we know and love. So there are techniques called low impact development techniques that you can actually implement that will slow down that water, that will treat water at the source, that will prevent from those algae blooms, erosion, ecosystem changes downstream, and will allow for our water table to continue to be percolated so that we don't have as many sinkholes.
It sounds like on a very small scale, you just described the Everglades on a larger scale, like
Right.
like the natural process of the Everglades, like slow the water down, have it percolate through, use soil and natural plants and everything to clean the water as it should be, even before we were, you know, here in the way that we are today. The water all flowed south, and we talk about this a lot because we're supporters of Captains for Clean Water and very familiar with the problems that are occurring in the Everglades. But what it sounded like you just described when I'm listening to it, it seemed like on a building site you could basically make a small Everglades, like the same principles apply. Is that right or not?
Yeah, you're working with the land, not fighting against it. And honestly, like there's only been one true human invention. Everything else is biomimicry. So
Is the
getting water to the quality that we want and doing it in a mimicked way, using the other Everglades and other areas as an example, is the way to go.
hmm. And so, what's the one true human invention?
It's a great question. It's actually the wheel.
The wheel.
And so
Okay.
that's is the wheel. And I hate the saying like don't reinvent the wheel because I feel like the wheel's been reinvented more than anything else. And and it needs to be, right? We need to innovate. But yeah, that I mean it was an invention out of necessity back in like 3500 BC. And apparently the first wheel was a pottery wheel.
Hmm. Interesting. So when we go to reinvent the wheel and you look at a place like Fort Lauderdale with the problems that they're having with sewage getting into the water, which we've talked about a number of times here, um, where do we go there? Like what as you're with all of you've studied, like the city is so big. Like what is the solution there? How do we deal with the problem? It just seems like, I mean, the way that my friend describes it, that's from Fort Lauderdale, there's just too many toilets. Like you put in another big apartment building here, there's 500 toilets in there. You put in another one across the street, there's another 500 toilets over there. Like, where does all that water go? And the infrastructure just doesn't seem like it can handle more building, yet we continue to build more and more. So, what, in your opinion, I'm sure there's not a simple solution, but what is a solution?
You are hitting on my soapbox right now. We in environmental engineering, we have these something called build out conditions, and it's like the max that this area can handle, whether it's impervious surface or building, water, wastewater, and that is dependent on your capacity of your wastewater treatment plant. Now, Fort Lauderdale isn't alone with this problem of sewage reaching the coast. Okay, any coastal city or any coastal area where there's pipes near the coast that get inundated, they are subject to these beach closures because of high levels of fecal bacteria. And
Mhm.
basically, what happens is it's called infiltration and inundation. So these pipes really close to the coast, when it rains or when there's sea level rise, these pipes are getting inundated. And as the pipes age, there's cracks and crevices that groundwater can actually infiltrate. Then that reaches a wastewater treatment plant at a capacity that it wasn't built for. And the wastewater treatment plant either has to, release raw wastewater or a mix of raw and treated wastewater into natural water bodies. I mean, there's other ways, like there's pipe bursts. There's the fact that some wastewater treatment plants don't have the capacity, even if they don't have INI. So there's a lot of issues, but this is not a localized issue. This is a pretty coast-wide issue. And on the
Mhm.
west coast of Florida, we don't close for much, but we close for bacteria. And whenever there's a beach closure, which happens often, it's because of those those poop bacteria.
Right. So where do we go from here? How do
So
you redo the infrastructure maybe?
yeah, it's really expensive. That's the thing. Like, it's always cheaper to plan and prepare up front than it is to take care of a problem after it happens, right? But needing to replace pipes is always a problem. It's just that when those pipes are getting submerged over and over again because they're near the coastline and we're building more on top, and then the water is, rising, and then we have more stormwater coming in because of all the building. That's where the lifetime of a pipe might change. So the first thing that you can do is make sure that we're maintaining our pipe systems. Next thing is don't permit a building or a hotel, whatever it is, unless the wastewater treatment plant has the capacity for it, and has a capacity considering I&I. I think that that's where we go wrong as well. So in Sarasota, uh, people kind of took matters into their own hands and tried a couple things. There's a company called Carbonex that I used to work with, and what they did is put a huge tank after the wastewater treatment process. So in wastewater treatment, you basically only do like primary and secondary treatment. You don't go through the tertiary treatment to get to the drinking water level, right? So you only have that primary and secondary, and then still at that point, the nutrients is really high. But so what this company did was not only provide a next stage of treatment with activated carbon, basically the stuff that you find in your water filter,
Mhm.
but also provide more storage for those times of overflow. so that they're not releasing into a natural water body. Instead, they have that extra storage to give them a little bit more wiggle room. And apparently, that was pretty successful. I don't know expense wise how much that would be compared to just expanding the wastewater treatment plant. I did design a few of those for Tampa Bay area back in the day, but yeah, I mean, we just have to do better planning. You know, economics up front is always a problem for long term economic gain. I mean,
Yeah.
no matter what you look at.
Yeah. It seems like a real pickle that that we find ourselves in because I don't know, the early settlers of Florida probably never dreamed that many other people would like to, or as many people would like to come down to Florida as have. And we can probably thank air conditioning and mosquito spraying for that because Florida was a really rough place before air conditioning and mosquito spraying. And I don't think that anyone dreamed that it would be as popular as it is today. But that makes a big difference, you know, that making it a lot easier. One of the things that I like about what I've seen from your accounts and from what you talk about is how everything seems to be connected, right? So this wastewater is connected to red tide in some way, shape, or form. This problem that we're talking about right now is connected to the problems that we see with the outflows of Lake Okeechobee in some way, shape, or form. So and then an interesting thing, I want to show you this picture too. I was looking through your stuff this morning, and you were talking about an unrelated phenomenon, the Saharan dust in the atmosphere, and and you had a really good explanation of that. And I wanted to show you this picture that I have framed right here in my office. But that picture, can you see that?
Yeah.
So
Where was
that
it taken?
in Key West. That's in Key West in about 2000 maybe, and there like that's just a regular film camera. There were no filters. I don't even think that had a polarizing filter on it. And that's just the way it looked that morning. I wish I could say that I was a good enough photographer to enhance the natural light, you know, to make something look like that. But we had this Saharan dust in the atmosphere at this time, and it was like this for like about a week and a half. Every morning was just these crazy sunrises, and this was probably the best photo that I got of it. It was my friend. We were fishing right next to one another, and I got that photo of them. But that's
That's incredible.
incredible photos, the Saharan dust. So tell us about that. Like, what is the phenomenon that brings Saharan dust all the way to Key West like that?
Yeah, so honestly, the Saharan dust is my favorite everything is connected example because you take dust that's coming over from the Sahara in Africa. Okay, it lifts up into this Saharan dust layer. Okay, it
Mhm.
comes over the Atlantic. It impedes on hurricanes. So this usually happens during the summer during hurricane season, and you notice that we get this lull in hurricane formation, and then all of a sudden it picks back up right after the Saharan dust it clears. But it comes over to the Amazon. It feeds the Amazon rainforest, but it also ends up in the Gulf of Mexico and feeds a precursor to Florida red tide called Trichodesmium. Now, this is a marine cyanobacteria species that lives in low nutrients, but their limiting nutrient is iron, and they can get iron from that Saharan dust. So the
Really?
Saharan dust can feed this bloom that then dies and feeds red tide on the bottom of the ocean where we think these blooms start.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah, it is. And so it's just the upper level winds at a certain time that I guess they're having storms over there, which get the dust up into the atmosphere, and then it moves all the way over. Like
Right.
crazy. And it
I
seems that
know.
that picture would have probably been taken in May or June, probably May. Would that be consistent with what you would think for that?
Probably I would think a little bit later than that.
Could have been late. It could have been June, but it probably wouldn't have been July.
Okay.
Like I just know where we were fishing right there. We wouldn't have
Right,
fished.
right.
later. But yeah, it's a strange phenomenon, and the most I've ever seen. Like you'll see it sometimes, but that year it was thick, and for whatever reason, it was crazy thick. So it feeds red tide, and you say that we think that red tide begins in the deep, cold part of the ocean.
Yeah, so we think it feeds a species that feeds red tide, like it's this whole domino effect. But yeah, it's thought that these blooms start 30 to 40 miles offshore of Tampa Bay, on the ocean bottom, and then with upwelling or currents or both, these blooms are brought to the surface and brought inland. For example, anytime we see these hurricanes come through and we see the water being pushed off Tampa Bay, we saw this in Irma, and we just saw this with Milton. We saw this with, what was it, Adelia?
Where it's
No.
empties out Tampa Bay. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, basically empties out Tampa Bay. Um, And no, Adalia wasn't one of them. But anyway, whenever that happens, we know that there's probably a forced upwelling event that happened. And those bottom waters come to the surface, bringing nutrients. That's where a lot of the nutrients is on the bottom of the. I mean, you guys know that all too well.
Mhm.
Gravity, everything that dies goes to the bottom. So all that organic matter has a lot of nutrients, and Florida red tide cells. There's thought to be a cyst phase that no one has really found yet. I'm kind of dead set on finding the cyst phase in a natural environment.
Hmm.
But with upwelling, those waters come to the surface, and the bloom begins.
So let's talk about just red tide. A lot of people have heard of red tide. They see the effects of red tide, but can you go into whether, first of all, whether it's a completely natural phenomenon or something that is somewhat man-made, or does some of our behavior and some of our habits, some of our mistakes, can it accentuate the red tide? So let's just start with, is it natural?
I think number three was the way to go. So I don't like using the word natural because people have such a problem with it. I've noticed that it's really a trigger word. It's a native species. So
Okay.
that's kind of what I like to say. It's a unicellular organism, a phytoplankton that releases a toxin. Um, this toxin can not only harm aquatic life, but the toxin can actually aerosolize, attach to sea salt particles in the atmosphere, move on shore with winds, causing coughing or sneezing. But if you have asthma or COPD, this can be really serious.
Hmm.
And in times with really intense, high concentration blooms, these toxic aerosols we found, have traveled more than 30 miles inland during the water crisis of 2018.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't know, a lot of the listeners may not have had that effect with red tide, but it certainly has affected me before. Where it is, I mean, it's a raspy, you just can't
Yeah.
clear your throat. It's not good. So if this is native, which it appears that it probably is, um, most things that are native have a benefit to them in some way, shape, or form. What would be the benefit of this bacteria or this red
That's a
tide?
that's a great question. So a lot of scientists think that its natural purpose is to basically reset the ecosystem,
Mhm.
use it as a reset. Now, Florida red tide, the species Carenia brevis, they're really slow growers, so they're outcompeted for nutrients, which is why they've adapted this toxin release. Um, but but we have a bloom pretty much every year since recording. It's when it gets close to shore and can use our nutrients from land derived nutrients to feed and exacerbate. That's really when the problems start.
And so what was confusing to me is that I've always heard that when let's just say that there's a big outflow of water to the east and west coast of Florida because we have a big rain event or a hurricane or something. Lake Okeechobee fills up. They've got to get rid of that water. You have an unnatural amount of fresh water going out the sides of the state. A lot of this is also carrying with it a lot of, you know, fertilizer, other things that are on the land or this water encounters. It goes out, and I was always under the impression that this was happening at very warm times of the year, where that water would go out with this extra nutrients in it, and then the red tide would somehow blow up because of that. And I thought it was the heat from the water. But then looking and listening to what you're saying is that the red tide actually lives in the cold part of and it's the upwelling. So how is it that effluent and that water that's going out the side of the state is accentuating or exacerbating this problem? Because
Yeah, and I wouldn't get too attached to temperature when it comes to red tide, because this species acts differently in natural environment than it does in a laboratory. But in the lab, it likes it best between 65 and 86 degrees. But we've seen it survive at higher temperatures and at lower temperatures. And when it is on the ocean bottom, if it is in a cis phase, that brings it to a whole nother temperature, realm. But yeah, I mean, so we wanted to keep the lake level as low as possible so that you didn't have to release in the summer when
right.
we would, but we have an ongoing red tide and they had to release. So let's back up for a second, just in case anybody is listening that doesn't know about Lake Okeechobee. We have this big lake in the middle of the state, and basically it drained down to the Everglades. That was the natural way of water. People from up north bought land down here in Florida, south of this lake. They went down there and it was all wet. They couldn't build houses, they couldn't farm, so they put a big dam south of the lake. And that allowed them to start farming and building houses. And there was a hurricane that came through in 1926 and broke the dam. 2 years later, another hurricane came through, and this one caused thousands of lives. So the Army Corps of Engineers came in to fix the problem, and their problem that they were fixing was simply to stop letting water come south. So they built basically an engineered system, and this is why it's so important for engineers to work with scientists and ecologists and biologists, because everything is connected. It's all system. But now, anytime the lake gets to a certain level, it's released to the Caloosahatchee River on the west and the St. Lucie on the east. And a lot of in the summer, this lake can be completely, like 95%. In 2018, it was covered with cyanobacteria, dominated by a toxic species of cyanobacteria. So if you've ever seen that green, thick, gross stuff on top of a lake, it's likely cyanobacteria. And there's thousands of species, but this time this bloom was dominated by microcystis. So we had a toxic algae bloom in Lake Okeechobee. We had Florida red tide on the coast. We had a lot of rainfall, and that water was released to the Caloosahatchee, filling in with this green slime into all the canalways. And then finally out to the coast, where Florida red tide can not only use the nutrients in this nutrient-rich water, but Florida red tide could actually consume microcystis, dead microcystis, which dies in the saltwater. So that bloom, and at one point, Florida red tide gets to a point where it can basically feed itself. It doesn't need any more land-derived nutrients because it's killing fish. It's, has their own life cycle. They can even consume dead, dying Karenia brevis cells. So it becomes this self-feeding blob. I shouldn't use the word blob. Self-feeding system.
And so when it becomes that, and we've probably seen that become that many times, what causes it to go away? Because it does come and go, or it seems to, or it comes and causes all kinds of problems that nobody wants to walk on the beach with a bunch of dead fish. It's the cardiovascular problems that we have with it, but then sometimes it'll just go away. So what causes it to go away?
You're right. Sometimes blooms last for like weeks or years. And we're so much better at predicting initiation than we are at dissipation. There's so many factors that are involved, like, weather and ocean currents, nutrient availability, the life of this bloom, the currents, like its power is in numbers. So there's a lot of offshore wind dispersing the bloom. They're less likely to survive because, as I said, they're not, they get outcompeted for nutrients. So there are so many things that come into play. And when we think about the fact that, predicting weather outside of 14 days is, not very good. Uh, so predicting Florida red tide months in advance and that dissipation is near impossible for now. But there are mitigation strategies that people are trying right now out of Mote Marine Laboratory.
Yeah. So I saw a couple of those. What can you tell me about what those mitigation strategies are? I saw one that was interesting with clay. Um,
Yeah. So I
but
worked a little
maybe,
bit.
I don't know which one you want to start with.
I mean, I guess we can talk about clay. And the interesting thing is that I don't know if they're having trouble getting permits or what, but the three mitigation technologies that have been just recently released and permitted are not clay. They're more oxidizers, time release oxidizers, things like that. But I think that the one that I'm most familiar with is the clay. I was kind of adjacently related to that project over at Mote, and they were working with Woods Hole, and
Did you
this clay. What?
work with Moat?
Oh yeah, I
Have
was
you?
a program manager for environmental health at Mote Marine Laboratory before I went over to NOAA.
We've done a few things with Moat as well, and then
That's
they have
awesome.
some different little stations in the Keys. Anyway, sorry. So tell me more about the clay.
Yeah, so basically this clay is optimized and really it's about the application. So you spray this clay and basically what it does is act as a flocculant. So it attaches both the cell and the toxin to the outside of the clay. It all like kind of binds together and then it drops with weight. So it in a wastewater treatment plant, this is basically the same kind of process that happens in one of the stages at a wastewater treatment plant where you flock things together, it coagulates, and then it drops to the bottom to basically remove it from the water column.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the thought here. The concern was that, okay, so does the toxin get released over time? Do the cells get released over time? Like how binding is this? How long does that last? And I don't have those answers right here and now, but there are definitely answers that I can get for you. The three technologies that have been recently released, I'm most familiar with one called Clear. My best friend's mom actually is the lead scientist on that, Dr. Dana Wetzel. And that is a time release, like an optimized time released oxidizer that has been proven to biodegrade pretty naturally and not have any long lasting impacts. Because really, that's the thing. You don't want to add something to the natural environment that's going to cause more problems down the line. We've seen that happen a million times.
My next question, because we have seen it happen a lot of times. You think you fix something and you actually do maybe fix that one thing, but you create a whole other problem that you didn't expect.
And look at Thomas Migley and Freon.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Oh yeah. So this guy, people were dying. There were food issues. They couldn't keep food cold. This guy invented Freon. He was like, "It's so safe. Look at me drink it." He drank it in front of a whole bunch of scientists. He ended up dying from an unfortunate pulley accident, shockingly. But so that went on the market. CFCs were all over the place, and we ended up with a huge ozone hole. Which now with the efforts globally, we are on our way to closing it. But it's amazing like how one thing can have this domino effect of adverse reactions that you didn't even see coming.
Yeah. I mean, sinking the red tide to the bottom. I mean, I don't know. What if it just goes down there and gets super strong? And I don't know. I don't know what that would do. Could it?
I mean, no, I
Yeah.
don't think that that's a problem. The bigger
Smarter
problem. Oh, I'm
on this.
sorry. What?
I said you have a lot of scientists that are a lot smarter than me working on this, but I just, it's like, okay, well, you just spray it on the water and then it just drops to the bottom and just is out of sight, out of mind for a little bit. But is it really solving the problem?
Well,
It's,
I think
no.
that Yeah, I think that that's what they're trying to find out, and it solves the problem probably for long enough that the bloom would dissipate. But the real question is, how much clay do you need, and how do you apply it? Like blooms are spread out, they're patchy. How do you make sure? And that's the same thing with all of these different technologies. The Corynea brevis has two tails, can exist anywhere in the water column. How do you know that when you're applying something, you're not applying to an area that doesn't need it? And how do you know that you're getting the actual bloom? And then the question is the benthic organisms, like how much clay is going to be down there, and is it impacting the benthos? And a lot of recent studies are saying no, but that was the concern for quite a while.
And what about these other methods? How do they apply those?
Um, they're gonna have to. I think that one. I'm trying to remember exactly because I didn't work on these projects. I think that they were looking at ROVs for deployment. What I would do is make sure that there's some kind of AI to detect
Hmm.
where these high concentrations of blooms are. I mean, if we can do it with a cell phone microscope, we could probably do it, with an ROV and basically some kind of application deployment. Um, so that's the one that I know about or read about with Clear.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be. I mean, in your opinion, are we having red tide um, events more frequently than we have in the past, or is this to be expected?
I don't think that it's hard to say more frequently. I mean, we've pretty much gotten one every year. It's not about the frequency, right? It's about the duration and intensity.
Right.
That's what really is the question, if we're, if that's getting worse. And it's kind of like, it's interesting. It's kind of like wildfires, right? When wildfires have to happen, um, just like perhaps Florida red tide does to reset the ecosystem, like we talked about before. But when they got out of control, that's when people step in with wildfires and
Right.
these mitigation tools. Maybe that's what, stepping in, at least we have a toolbox, so we don't have another 2018 where we lost like $2.7 billion or something ridiculous like that.
And that
Um,
and explain why we would lose that. Obviously, if the beaches are full of dead fish, nobody wants to go out there. But what are the other economic factors that maybe I'm not thinking about that would cause that much loss?
yeah, so I mean, it's not just a few dead fish, right? It was a ton
Yeah.
of dead fish. The toxic aerosols were traveling, people were getting sick. The beaches were just gross. And then national media attention to the southwest part of Florida was bringing to everybody's attention that there was this terrible thing and you shouldn't go to Florida. So the rest of Florida was losing tourism. There were bait shop owners. I mean, that's where my death threats mostly came from, was bait
You got
shops. So,
death threat?
oh yeah,
You
like it
did.
was, yeah. So people always want something to blame, right? Because
Mhm.
if they find something to blame, they can fix it. So back then, they were pointing their finger at Big Sugar, and then they pointed their finger at Mosaic, and then they saw that Mote Marine Laboratory, like, they received like $2,500 for a turtle run from Mosaic once. And the thing is, like, it has nothing to do. We work completely independently in our research programs. So people saw that and they were like, "Oh, follow the money. It must be that Moat's lying about red tide, and they know, like." It was the craziest thing because us at Moat, we're nonprofit scientists. We are not making good money. We're doing it to protect people and to do the right thing. Like, it was just the craziest thing. And I was the one, as Jim Cantori said, the face of red tide at the time. So I was the one that was accessible. So then the fingers pointed to the scientists. And so, like, I got, there's a there's a special place in hell for you, you know, like I'm gonna find you, I know where you live. Like it was really scary. People on private Facebook pages were literally making up stories. And it didn't help that I was on a show called Mythbusters because then people thought I was a paid actress.
Right.
So it was a disaster. It was definitely the hardest point in my life, probably.
And how has that changed from then to now?
Um, I'm telling you, if we had another bloom that was just as economically and quality of life devastating, I can't say that I don't think that it would happen again. I do. I don't know where the fingers would be pointed, but I don't think that there's been enough change for it not to be pointed at Mosaic and sugar again.
Right.
Um, but hopefully, people know enough to know at this point that the scientists are really there to help them. And that the reason why we don't have all the answers, which is sad, right? 70 years of research and we didn't have all the answers. I can't tell you how this bloom's going to dissipate. Initiation too. It's we've been trying to answer questions on a microscopic species in a huge body of water that acts differently in a lab than it does in the natural environment. And we've been having to do that with very small grants. 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks we take a cruise in this one, the same trajectory. Like how are we going to get the life cycle and answer these questions this way? It's just
Right.
it really is that hard, which is why I took my job at NOAA to get ecosystem modeling as part of the unified forecast system, which is an Earth systems model, so that we can understand all the connectivity.
So is that just purely a computer model, or is that a simulated physical model?
Good question. This is a computer model, numeric modeling. So basically, this numeric model started with weather, the unified forecast system. So like the global forecast and the GFS, you've
Mhm.
probably heard of that during hurricane season. That's part of the UFS. And then I was the portfolio manager for the ocean and coastal models. So that's everything from the bottom of the ocean to storm surge. So
Wow.
that was my portfolio, including algae blooms, oil spills, erosion, things like that. Uh, so my goal was to get not only all of those NOS offices to work together so that we can have the physics with the ecology, but also connect them to the Earth system so we had the weather as well.
Wow.
And so that's yeah. So that's why I went to NOAA to actually help Florida red tide.
So how do you think that model has improved over the years, and maybe with AI? I'm sure that AI is a part of that, and supercomputers and more power and more computing power. Have you seen that model improve? And as we're seeing with weather forecasting, I mean, I see the weather forecasting improve. I mean, obviously, everybody wants to blame the weatherman for, when on Saturday when the wind starts blowing on your day to go fishing. But I really think that, and to have it on your phone, like everybody can see, like so much further in the future for the weather any way they want to. Like I
Oh
have an
yeah,
app. You can change the modeling system. You can see the European model or GFS or any of these other ones, and some of them seem to be much more accurate for a certain area than others, and
you're right.
certainly them have been more accurate for certain hurricane paths than others. And I just wonder how you, as a scientist and somebody that's right in it, how do you see, like, not just the weather forecasting and the red tide forecasting, but how do you see it all working together because everything's connected, as you say? Um, are we getting exponentially better? Is it about the
I
same?
was
What do you think?
I would say we're getting exponentially better. I mean, and that was kind of the problem this year, right? Hurricane Helene came and our models were right. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
our surge models were right. And even my portfolio, those surge models for Milton were right too. They actually did predict that the surge would be further south than Tampa. Um, and that's the thing. People were like, well, one problem is that people don't know what 8 feet of water is to them. They don't know what that means for their house. They
Right.
don't. They don't know. And it's not just. I mean, if they're living on the coastline, yeah, you need to know what 8 feet means for your house. But if you're living inland, you need to know how your entire watershed works with
Right.
compounding flooding and with the water level on the coastline at a higher stage than it ever is, and that fresh water coming in. But our surge models were spot on, and people did not prepare.
How
I
would
mean,
people, like you say, they need to know how their entire watershed works, but you're talking about like 100-year flood. Like, how would someone know? Is there a way that you could know how, like, what that amount of water would do if you've never seen it in your entire lifetime? How would you know?
you're exactly right. How would you know? That's what we have to get. We have to get better with our visualization tools so that people can have better information and prepare better for storms. Like we have this national water model that is undergoing a huge change, moving over to something called next gen national water model. And then we have these weather models and coastal models that are constantly improving. But we really need to put some effort into our visualization tools, and I worry right now about that. But I'm really hoping that that's still somehow we have our eye on that ball,
Mhm.
because if we're going to get better, if we're doing this to protect the public, you have to go all the way. You can't stop. You can't stop it. I gave you the data. You have to go all the way, and that's where that communication, that social science really comes in.
Mm. Interesting. Okay. So, as far as like red tide goes and what we've discussed, and I'm sure that there are some ways that we could, in your opinion, that the public, anglers, outdoorsmen, people that care about the environment, I'm sure that there are things that we might be able to do if we unified together and did them. What would you say those would be? If you could say, a couple of different things that we could do that would make a difference.
Well, at your own home, I mean, not fertilizing and watering during the rainy season is something that everybody can do. You can also disconnect your impervious surface, meaning that instead of having water go from your roof down your gutter into storm sewer on the bottom of your driveway, um, you can have that water go into a rain garden or infiltration trench. But really, as anglers, the most important thing is data. We are always at need for more data. The beach conditions reporting system, the probably a year before I left Moat, I developed this app that anybody from anywhere in the world can report environmental conditions. And hopefully, I'll be expanding on that in the very near future, because anglers, captains, people on boats, they're the ones that see the things first.
Right.
For example, like the spinning fish issue that happens, or the dolphin necropsies, or the dolphin fatalities, rather, that happened in the Northern Gulf a bunch of years ago, or the manatee fatalities. Like, it's people outside that are noticing those things first. They notice the changes first.
Right. Well, it's
Um,
always fishing guides. Um, bird. I mean, I would imagine that fishing. I don't know, bird watching guides too, but fishing guides are in tune with everything. You're catching the bait. You're trying to catch the fish. You're watching the birds. You're watching everything. You're looking at the color of the water. You're looking at the height of the tide. You're looking at every single thing affects your ultimate goal of trying to catch this particular fish that you're after for that day. And a lot of fishing guides work 300 or more days a year, and they are going to be, I don't know that anybody who else is out there more, right?
you're
Like, there's
exactly right.
maybe a bird watching guide that is super busy, maybe,
Right.
but even then, they're they're not, they're focused on maybe one thing. I don't know. I wouldn't take away from a bird watching guide. A bird watching guide that's out there 300 plus days a year. Anyone that's out there 300 plus days a year are
Totally.
going to be very in tune with what's going on. A spearfishing guide, a scuba instructor, anyone like that is going to notice things that are completely unnoticed from somebody that spends half that amount of time on the water.
Can I give you a really weird metaphor?
Yeah.
So my dog, okay, I have a dog. I love this dog more than anything.
What kind of dog is it?
She's what?
What kind of dog?
She's a Staffordshire Terrier. I'm looking at her right now. and she's 15. She'll be 15 in like 2 weeks. But yesterday, for example, I just looked at her face and I was like, oh my gosh, she's about to throw up. Picked her up, got her outside. If she's lethargic one day, just the littlest thing I notice, and I know that something's wrong. I know that something's going on. I bring her to a vet. The vet looks at her, she's fine. And that's the difference between an angler, anybody that's on the water every day, compared to a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
The scientist is important, but without that anecdotal information, we don't, we're going in there blind.
That's exactly right. So when we go back to this app that you created, and you were saying that anglers and guides and people that are on the boat all the time are super important to it. So it was a beach conditions app. What it
Yeah,
was?
it's out of Mote Marine Laboratory. It's called the Beach Conditions Reporting System. And right before I left, I was going to work with Captains for Clean Water to get some of that data automatically. And I know that some places are doing it, some people are doing that because that's even critical information. I mean, do you know, like, bathymetry is constantly changing and we can never keep up with it. I mean, just knowing that, like, just having that alone would be helpful for our models. But
That you
water,
the salinity.
what?
You're saying salinity? What did you say that one?
Oh, I said the bathymetry. So
Okay, you're gonna have to. That is to me and everyone else.
yeah. So sorry. So bathymetry is basically the topography of the ocean bottom.
Bathymetric chart, right? So
yeah. Bathymetry. Yeah. You got it. Yeah, just the elevation of the bottom of the water. That stuff's really important. That tells us, that tells us a lot about currents and potential surge and waves and all the things. But outside of that, like when fish are acting weird, when there's water discoloration. I was on this show called When Sharks Attack, and they would give me an anomaly area where shark bites happened. So like the Space Coast in 2003, for example. And then I would look through all of the information, and it was crazy because the anecdotal information is what gave me like leads. Do you want to hear this story?
Yeah.
Or are we going to go down? I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but it does have to do with algae blooms. So this year there were a number of launches that happened from Kennedy. Okay. There were a number, like 3 bites within a very short period of time. And someone said that they saw an orange slick. So you look at all the chemicals that can appear orange over there, possible. And yeah, it could have been something from the launch, but the location didn't really work out. And then, like, I keep on looking, and eventually I run into, and this is going to sound crazy, but reports of food poisoning in New York City. And it was because people were eating pufferfish from the Indian River Lagoon.
Okay.
That had a toxin from an algae bloom that would have casted this orange haze. Right. So that's how, all this anecdotal stuff adds up to these real theories. So was it that there was this toxin from this algae bloom that was messing with basically the navigation system of a shark? Or was it that this thing was so thick that they just couldn't see and they were, biting things because they thought it was food?
But people would be swimming in this orange slick?
Yeah, apparently they were like, oh, maybe it's sediment or clay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, depending on what kind of orange it looked like
Right.
Orange, kind of like seaweed orange, or orange like a natural, crazy nuclear waste orange.
Right. And it looked like a crazy nuclear waste orange, to be honest, but it was probably this algae bloom just taken with a camera and enhanced.
And so that could, from somehow, that algae bloom affected the sharks in a way that they bit 3 people.
Could have. More likely. It was because they had a surfing competition during the black tip migration. But all of that stuff
Do that,
together.
they do that every year though, and most times nobody gets bit, right?
Right, right.
Hmm, interesting.
I
But
know.
I mean, some of those black tip migrations, when you look at it from a drone, now that we have drones, there are thousands of sharks out there, thousands,
Oh, yeah.
and people are swimming all around them, and they're walking all around them, and they're just the sharks are going just like you would see, um, in a school of bait, and you see a shark swim through. It's like when somebody's walking, the sharks are just all around them from a drone. And these are all things that we didn't see before we had drones, or maybe you could see from a high-rise apartment building. You'll see some videos of that, but it's just like there are so many of those sharks everywhere, and most of the times they're not biting anyone,
Right.
but like occasionally they do. And so that's you when you kind of trace it back to this orange um, slick. So then now what do you do with that data? Like just kind of explain the shark bites, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. So then you can know what to look for next time, like, um, but but the only it was kind of a tangent, but the reason why I wanted to share it is just because that all that anecdotal information went to went to finding this out. Another one was, like, oh, here was a better one. There was anomaly shark bites in southeast Florida, and it ended up being because of, and I looked at the model data and the productivity data from NOAA. Turned out that Hurricane Irma caused an upwelling event that caused a huge spike in productivity, bringing bait fish and sharks to an area that normally it's not.
Hmm.
And that was verified by anglers who said that the fishing in 2017 was never better
Hmm.
in that area.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's a benefit to something like that. What do you
Right.
think of like when we're talking about this? There are always going to be, a lot of the fishing guides that are out there the most are also the tightest lipped. Like they don't want to tell anybody anything because they know that they know something that everybody else doesn't because they're out there all the time.
Right.
So there's some resistance to um, releasing certain data to scientists, I think,
Right.
because past situations, maybe some data was released and then now you can't fish there anymore, or some data is released and maybe I don't know the area closes or is restricted in some way, shape, or form. So how do we
Huh.
get around?
That's a great that's a great point. I think that we ask the right questions, right? Like we ask the helpful questions. That doesn't result in that kind of thing happening. I
Right.
mean, did locations close for the sawfish mortality
Uh,
event?
no, not that I'm aware of, but when but before that, you're asked to report sawfish. I know some people that would never report one because they think, well, we just won't be able to go there anymore, right? And
That
but
makes
then
sense.
you have an event where the sawfish are doing something really weird. I don't
Yeah.
think I don't think that the resistance was there at all. I think that most people are reporting those things that are happening that are I mean, those sawfish were acting very, very strange. And
Right.
so around that period of time, that's when the fish spinning was going on too. What do you know about those two things? Because it seems like it's not happening as much.
Right. So there was no smoking gun. There was no like this is definitely what it is, but it was most likely due to, and my friend Michael Parsons, who is the Gambardiscus, or I think that the Gamby for short, is this benthic uh, phytoplankton species that is usually in very low concentrations, usually doesn't produce a toxin, but we know with other species in certain conditions, certain environments, non-toxin producing species can produce toxin. And I shouldn't say it's non-toxic producing for the species, but that area, because we know that certain species of, algae, like Lingbia, for example, produce toxins in other places, but not so much in Florida. So this was never thought to be a big deal, but this is what was interesting. I think it was FWC or someone was taking samples and they're like, oh, it's a low concentration, like 100 cells per liter or something like that. And I'm just making that number up, but which would be low for red tide, but apparently it was like 10 to 100 times higher than it normally is for this species. Um, and it's very likely that that species was producing a toxin because when the sawfish stopped spinning, when we stopped seeing impacts, was about the time of year where that species of algae basically dissipates.
So is that a
And
temperature or
yeah,
like?
in temperature.
Yeah. Mm,
Yeah, and most likely, I mean, my hypothesis is that the heat wave caused a lot of ecosystem change in that area that
mm,
then led to this species being able to take advantage and proliferate, probably because of the absence of another species.
the absence of another species. So like the heat could have killed something else that
Right.
allows this to to proliferate more so than normal. It affects the bait fish all the way up to the sawfish.
Everything is connected.
Some things more than others. Like some fish didn't seem to have that problem, and then others seem like the sawfish is a really weird thing for a giant fish like that to be acting so strange. And
Yeah. I mean, and that's because this species is a benthic species, and that's where the sawfish are.
right, right. So you also did a funny named show, Cocaine Shark, um, which I guess like, well, tell me about that. Like, the idea was that there are bales of cocaine floating out into in the ocean, I guess, and
Yep. That was basically
that
it.
there are sharks that have been tested to have some sort of level of cocaine in their bloodstream. I don't know. Why
Well,
don't you just tell me about?
yeah, at this point, so I was approached with the idea of cocaine sharks and I loved it because it was a really catchy name and I figured, it would shed light on a real and growing problem of chemicals in our
Mhm.
ecosystem that are impacting everything. And we have seen studies of, methamphetamines and other recreational and pharmaceutical drugs impacting different fish organisms, shrimp, and other parts of the world. But such a study has never been done in the Keys. But we know that there's a lot of cocaine bales washing up, and especially the year that we filmed this show, there were a lot washing up in the Keys. So it was a really good idea to do this. And like what I wanted to know is the first question that people ask me is, do these do these bales actually break open? Because they're usually packed pretty tight. Okay, so I did an experiment with that actually independently after the show. We looked at on the show, we dropped cocaine bales to see if the sharks would be alerted. There's a noise. Will the shark go over? And if you've ever um, tiger sharks, if you ever have an experience with tiger sharks, you know that they eat pretty much everything.
Mhm.
So we did get some good shots of sharks, chopping into those bales that were dropped. So yeah, there's a possibility that a shark would be acutely impacted, and we don't know what would happen. Just like cocaine bear,
Mhm.
the bear actually died.
Yeah.
But you figure if that was a real thing, it's way more likely that a shark would come in contact with a cocaine bale than a bear.
Right. Right. I mean, certainly, and certainly back in the 70s and 80s, when there were probably even more bales washing up, but bales of all kinds of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess the idea also, and what's interesting to me about that, we did this bonefish um, study with Nick Castillo. Do you know?
Yeah.
And he came on the boat with us and did, and we caught bonefish, and then we took their blood samples, and we got samples to see if there were any pharmaceutical drugs in the bonefish. And he was thinking that bonefish was a really good species to study for this because they would go in very shallow water. They get very close to the shorelines. I
Mhm.
don't around. There could be kind of a canary in the coal mine, I guess. And so bonefish were kind of the target species. I'm sure there's plenty of other species that we could have caught, but we did catch those, and it was a very interesting show. And the idea that there could be cocaine in a shark um, is kind of another thing for a larger, more common thing is that we could have pharmaceutical drugs in the fish. And if the pharmaceutical drugs are in the fish, what is that actually telling us? And so what Nick was saying was that, there could be a leak in the water treatment area and we're getting some of these drugs into the water. That's how the fish are coming in contact with them. I don't know what your if we're seeing pharmaceutical drugs or other chemicals, like you mentioned other chemicals in fish, what other chemicals are you looking for and what kind of fish are you looking for to have them?
I mean, so there's so many different ways that these fish might be impacted by chemicals, especially pharmaceuticals, birth control, things like that. Because like I was saying earlier, much earlier, wastewater treatment plants only treat those first two. So even if it's not a wastewater overflow or a spill or a pipe break, that cleaned water won't be testing for those. It's expensive to test for all of these chemicals. They're not testing for them, and nor is the wastewater treatment plant uh, actually designed to treat those chemicals. So the water that we are putting back into our natural systems could have these not could have these chemicals
Wow.
that could accumulate in certain species of fish, depending on how their body works.
Hmm. What about us? Like when if that's just going through the treatment plant, like you say, and then just getting recycled back into drinking water, and
Yeah.
it's not tested. So how would we get like if you wanted to be careful about that? I mean, there's like a Berkey water filter. Is that going to get rid of pharmaceuticals? I mean, that's like the one
Well,
that I have. I think it's a really good one, but I don't know if
yeah.
it's getting those.
Well, here's the thing. Like what I was talking about before was the wastewater treatment plant. Now, for us, we drink water from a water treatment plant, and depending on what kind of treatment that tertiary treatment is, um, I mean, it could remove a lot of those chemicals depending on what treatment it is. Um, I always use a Brita filter no matter what because it gets rid of some of those ions. But I mean, RO systems can get rid of everything, but the water tastes terrible, so then you have to mix it afterwards. The best thing that we can do is really focus on water treatment. People ask me all the time if I can do one thing to change the world, what would it be? And it would be enhance our capability of treating water, because I really think that that is going to be our critical point, like our limiting factor moving forward. It's going to be really important that we have clean, safe drinking water because we are not evolving as fast as the water is changing,
Mhm.
um, and as fast as we're coming up with new chemicals.
Do you see that from coming from like desal plants and using ocean water, or would you see the if you were to look into the future, is it all fresh water that is being treated, better? I don't know. Like it seems like we run out of fresh water maybe, and
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have to go to desal, right? Because with growing populations and limited fresh water, but trying to find a low energy, low cost way to do it has been the problem. Like Tampa Bay water has, kind of shown. Um, but treating water, both of those two, like really need to be a focus. Um, yeah, because we are so dependent. We're like, if you had a Jenga set, we're at the top. We're like those top blocks, and we're like in the sixth mass extinction, and most of those things being extinct are like bacteria. We're not actually feeling it yet, but as things start being impacted, changed, moved, like us at the top, we might not be moving, we might not be swaying, but our stability or the structural integrity is definitely weakening.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important that we fill those holes and maintain our structure before it's too late. Because again, this will be another one of those expensive things to fix.
What are ways that we could do that? Like, especially if we were to, you know, do something together, or people were to take actions that could fill those holes, exactly like you just described. What would be a few actions that we could all take?
I mean, first of all, conserving water is always a good thing. Um, so
Even
that
in
that
a place where there's tons of water, like I mean, Florida does have a lot of water,
we do
uh,
have a lot of water.
but conserving water. So what when you say conserving water,
Yeah.
um, like what actions conserve water in your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, just because we have, water is all around us doesn't mean that it's all drinkable.
Right.
You know, we are primarily dependent on groundwater in the state. There's some surface water as well, but the more population that we have, the more that we use.
Mhm.
We're setting ourselves up for sinkholes and water quality changes, things like that. So conserving water is definitely a, a thing you can do. Again, not adding chemicals when you don't have to, and it sucks because I hate mosquitoes so much. You know, I really do. I hate them so much. And like reef safe sunscreens, things like that. Um, but also, just contributing to citizen science and having a voice for the priority of water quality. I think that can go really far because that's where the votes come in, where the politicians start listening. That's where the money starts changing and really going towards those priorities that will help us live a better quality of life, um, and save money in the long run. So I think that just having that voice and coming together, like Captains for Clean Water has done so well, right? And these water keepers have done really well. These conservation groups, um, and then these fishing groups too.
Hmm. I think that Captains for Clean Water, in my opinion, why they've done so well is that they identified, rather than just being angry and being mad at whoever, or pointing the blame somewhere. Maybe that's part of it, but there are definite solutions that have been identified, and the solutions, um, for the most part, if public attention is brought to the fact that these solutions already exist, that we can actually make a big difference. And that's where, uniting together and having a voice that's much larger than if we're fractured into all these small groups. And what we all really want, as far as all being anglers and fishermen and boaters, we want clean water. We want water that we can recreate in, whether that's fishing or diving or boating or just simply walking on the beach, and having a nice clean beach without dead fish everywhere. And so pointing to the solution, I think, has been what has really propelled them to being as successful as they can. Where other groups, I get it, you're mad, I get it, like we're all mad, but I don't know that that was the most productive. Although it did
No,
bring, it got people's attention. When people were so angry that they are, I mean, it definitely gets people's attention. But I do like the solution based thing, which kind of brings me to kind of the close here of you mentioned a few different things that we can do, but where do you see, like, are you optimistic, like, with as much as about all of the underlying things and this whole Jenga tower that you described, are you pessimistic or optimistic about the future of, let's just say, Florida, but then expand that to the southeast of the United States, because it's all connected. The whole world's connected.
yeah.
But what do you think about being pessimistic or optimistic about the next 10 years in Florida?
It's hard to be pessimistic when it comes to Florida. I'm very optimistic because this is the one place where it doesn't matter where you politically stand, like what culture, background, just like you were just saying, everybody is on the same page when it comes to clean water. And that's why I'm hopeful. That's why I'm still in Florida right now because this is where the hope is. Because everybody can come together for the same common goal of a better environment because we're all impacted by it, you know? And we all have our own little parts of Florida with our own problems. Like I gave a talk about red tide in Gainesville. No one knew what red tide was. But they have other problems. You know, Nestle is taking all the water and they have major springs water quality changes. So, I mean, I shouldn't say taking all the water, but you know what I mean? Like there's an issue there where people are pretty mad that they're getting water for free and then selling it right back to us. And they've seen those changes in the springs in the water quality. You know, down in, you know, Biscayne Bay, they have their issues with water quality. Miami with sea level rise. You know, over here we have Florida red tide, cyanobacteria. Everywhere has cyanobacteria, and of course the wastewater overflows. So like, it's all one water, and we're all on one team when it comes to water quality.
It seems like with knowing so much and studying all these, it would be easy to be pessimistic, but you managed to not be that way.
It is easy to be pessimistic when we're looking at, you know, just data. but but I have hope for humanity. All the things that data doesn't show, the potential, the hope, the momentum we have moving forward. And the thing is, like, I really think Florida can lead the rest of the country in environmental stewardship.
Well, we have a great opportunity with the Everglades Restoration Project, and it's the largest project like that known to man. So we can do a good job there. I wouldn't see any other way other than lead, um, and set an example that the rest of the world can look at and see that, you know, mistakes are made. Like you definitely make mistakes, like building dams and dikes and roads and all that through the Everglades and literally trying to drain it. That was a mistake. We can see clearly today that that's not the way that we should have done it. Uh, but if we can show that that can be repaired, even small pieces at a time, um, I think that there's hope for lots of other places that have been wrecked even worse than
Right.
than the Everglades. Um, but interesting. So, how do people follow you? You've been on TV a whole bunch. You've done. Do you have any new projects that you're working on right now?
I hope so. I hope so. We'll see. We'll see soon. But I'm hoping to return to storm chasing soon. But no details at this moment. And hopefully, Weird Earth will get picked back up on the Weather Channel. But until then, at Inspector Planet on everything, but mostly Instagram for now. I'm being told I have to do TikTok. I really don't want to.
Well, it's very popular.
I hear.
Very popular. I'm not on it personally. We have an account there, but I don't do anything with it. I just haven't really. I don't know. I haven't gotten into TikTok, but we do have an account there.
What's your
You can.
favorite fish?
My favorite fish is a permit.
I love permit. They're so cute.
I know they're also really hard to catch
Yeah.
sometimes, but that's probably my favorite. You know, when I first started guiding in Key West, that was considered to be the hardest fish to catch by far, and so I figured, well, I'll just start with that one, and when I don't catch anything, it won't even raise an eyebrow. And you know, because if you were to go after easy fish and you don't catch anything, people are like, "What kind of
Oh,
loser?"
you suck. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a no lose situation of going after those, and you know I would see some, and then actually I started to catch them, and then it just became my favorite. Um, I do love the permit though. It's my favorite inshore and even offshore. But I mean I like them all, and but that one edges out the rest of them just slightly.
That's
What's your
awesome. Um, so it depends where I am, but like I really like the flats near Flamingo and
yeah
redfish hunting, like on foot with
yeah
a
on
fly.
foot
Yeah,
yeah
on foot with a fly
yeah
rod.
yeah okay
Um,
that can be interesting on foot in the Everglades or around Flamingo. 'Cause some of that stuff is really soft.
I know. It's fun.
You find that out very quickly.
Yeah.
You sink to your armpits.
You
In
have
a
to be really, really careful with tides too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But that is really some of the best red fishing anywhere is to fish right out of Flamingo. We fish there all the time, and it's gotten so much better. And we've seen the red fishing be not so good, be really good, be fantastic, and then even some changes now. But it's pretty good right now.
That's
And
awesome.
you like fly fishing? Do you ever fly fish for permit?
I haven't yet, but hopefully, I'm
Yeah.
not very good at it yet. I gotta admit, like I'm not like some pro fly fisher.
Well, the
You know.
redfish is a perfect target for learning how to fly fish for any,
Yes.
because they sit there very still and you can make 20 casts at them. The permit, they don't sit there very still and you move your rod once and they take off. So not good for confidence. Very bad
Yeah.
for confidence. Redfish is very good for confidence. So stay with that for just a little while until you get the confidence
Right.
up. Then maybe
Then
go
maybe
boom.
someday I'll graduate to permit.
Yeah, and then permit and tarpon too, but they're all good. But thank you so much for coming on and helping us out with understanding some of these things, because like with the red tide thing, with the temperature and the different water exacerbating this red tide, it was a little confusing, and I hope that it definitely cleared it up for me a little bit, and I learned a lot about it. So I hope it did that for the same audience. And if you are wanting more, Inspector Planet everywhere, right? You have YouTube too?
Yeah, I have to start using it though next week.
Okay.
Next week I'll
Mostly,
start.
mostly Instagram. All right. Well, I'd love to have you back on to talk about. Hopefully, we won't be talking about some big red tide event. Maybe we'll be talking about why it disappeared. That would be
Right.
awesome. But I'd love to have you back.
I would love to be back. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. All right. That's it for today. And we'll be back with another awesome guest, just like Dr. Tracy, next week. See ya.